Hi everyone, really good to see you. My name is Bryony and I'm part of the kids team at Gorsey Baptist Church. Now I think some of you this week may be starting to go back to school now that lockdown is lifted a bit, and I wonder how you're feeling about this. Maybe you're feeling really excited to see your friends again, or just have some sort of normal routine again. But maybe you're also a little bit nervous about going back after having such a long break, or about what school might look like now there'll be social distancing and that sort of thing. Or maybe you're not going back to school this week and you're feeling really disappointed, like you were looking forward to going back. Or maybe you're feeling a mixture of all sorts of things. And I think it's perfectly normal to feel lots of different emotions, particularly when the situation is so unusual and so unclear. Now, if you are going back to school, or if not, I've got something from the Bible which I hope will help you. And this comes from a book in the Bible called 2 Corinthians. Now, 2 Corinthians is actually a letter, and it was written to one of the very first churches called Corinth. And Corinth was in Greece. I've got it on a map here. So the black dot there shows where Corinth is. And this church was formed thousands of years ago, quite shortly after Jesus died and rose again. And the letter was written to them by someone called Paul. Now, Paul was an early follower of Jesus, and he helped set up the churches, and he used to write letters to them to encourage them and to help them know more about Jesus. Now, these very early churches faced an awful lot of problems. The government really didn't like Christians back in that day. It didn't want them to meet together. It didn't want churches to form. It didn't want them to tell other people about Jesus. Even some Christians were put to death because they followed Jesus. So these people in Corinth were facing all sorts of different problems. But Paul wrote this letter to help them, and he said this to them. He said, "We are being pressed in from every side by our troubles, but we won't be crushed. We are confused, but we won't be driven to despair. We are being hunted down, but won't be abandoned by God. We are knocked down, but won't be destroyed." So what Paul is saying, even though they are facing all these truly difficult and terrible things, they won't be knocked down, they won't be destroyed, because God is with them and God won't abandon them. He said something else to them in order to help them. He said, "You have the power of God within you." He said, "You have a light shining in your hearts. We are like fragile jars of clay containing a great treasure." We said to them, "You're like a jar of clay," which may sound a bit odd. A jar of clay may look a little bit like this. Now I know this one's plastic, but use your imagination. He said we are like this. It may look ordinary from the inside, like quite fragile, quite easy to break. But if you look inside, it contains the most wonderful and great treasure you can imagine. And Paul said that this treasure within us is the power of God. It is like a light shining out of us. It is like the most amazing, wonderful, powerful thing we can have within us. And you know what? This isn't just true for those Christians in Corinth thousands of years ago. This is true today for anyone who follows and loves Jesus. We, like them, are also like jars of clay. Even though we may look ordinary and fragile from the outside, inside we still have the power of God. And this means if we are facing difficult or hard situations, we won't be knocked down, we won't be destroyed, because we have the power of God within us. So can I encourage you, if this week you're feeling nervous about going back to school, or confused about not going back to school, say to yourself, "I am a jar of clay. I have the power of God within me, the most wonderful hidden treasure." And remember, God will be with you, He won't abandon you, His power is within you, therefore you can face anything.